What did you make of James Murray's comments there, and more, I suppose, more pertinently, what Keir Starmer is saying on Brexit?
Well, just on James Murray, you know, what really hits me is the way these people repeatedly conflate divergence with a weakening of UK standards. The notion that if we make policies for British national interest, somehow we're going to be a lesser entity than we would be if we just adopted wholesale what they do in Brussels. Brussels is by no means a sort of moral guidance for the world. It doesn't set moral high ground that we must all trot into line with. Brussels does what Brussels needs to do for its own advancement, which, by the way, as you know, Peter, as well as I do, is not always in the interest of its member states either. You know, Brussels is its own organisation, the EU is its own organisation, and like any organisation, it promotes itself. What we need to do in the United Kingdom, what Brexit essentially was a vote for, was for the government to make policies for British national interest. And quite often, they won't be aligned with EU interests. They will be opposed. For example, in foreign policy, we saw how Germany was buying Russian oil and Russian gas wholesale for months after the war kicked off, whereas we had already put in stringent sanctions. And there'd be many, examples of where we need to do what we believe is right for the British people. Sadly, what we haven't done is enough of that. And for Starmer to say that we'd be better off not diverging, that he wishes to effectively become a rule taker, is like saying he would wish to surrender the United Kingdom to the EU. That's what it is, isn't it, Peter?
It's a bit weird for him to say this, and I mean, the Daily Mail is saying his mask has slipped on this. It is interesting from that perspective in this sort of divergence idea. I mean, really, it's code. I hope I'm not being too cynical here, Ben, but I just think it's code for not accepting Brexit and not accepting that, you know, he says the closer aligned we are to the EU, the better. I mean, surely the point is that we can go off and do our own thing. It's to be an independent nation. It's to, even though it hasn't been entirely successful so far, to take back control of our laws, money and borders. As simple as that.
Absolutely. And the reason it hasn't been successful so far is because we haven't genuinely Brexited. We haven't done anything with Brexit. We've still got all their regulations on our statute books. Northern Ireland, as you know, as well as I do, is left behind in the single market. We've got a parliament that in majority is still opposed to Brexit. And remember what Starmer was saying in 2019. He would get a good, if elected, the Labour Party would get a good deal with the EU. They'd put it to the people in a referendum against an option for remaining. And then he would campaign in favour of Remain. Do you remember that?
Yes,
and
indeed, yeah.
This is not a party or an individual that believes in an independent United Kingdom. They don't have the confidence to govern. And by definition, he's ruling himself out of office. You know, if you don't have the confidence to govern because you want to make yourself subjugated to some other foreign entity, well, you don't deserve to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom.
Let's listen to the person who wants to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Here's a clip of Starmer talking about EU rule divergence. This was the Global Progress Action Summit in Canada.
Most of the conflict with the UK being outside of the UK arises insofar as the UK wants to diverge and do different things to the rest of our EU partners. Obviously, the more we share values, the more we share a future together, the less the conflict. And actually, different ways of solving problems become available. You know, actually, we don't want to diverge. We don't want to lower standards. We don't want to rip up environmental standards, working standards for people at work, food standards, and all the rest of it.
That's just as clear as day to me, Ben.
It is as clear as day, and of course, you could apply what he's saying to any foreign power. You know, if we were to fall into line with all Chinese regulations, we'd have an entirely harmonious relationship with a totalitarian, hostile regime. But that doesn't mean that, we should do it or fall into line with any other individual countries' regulations and laws. You know, we need to recognise that the vote for Brexit was a vote for an independent United Kingdom, with Westminster being the supreme parliamentary authority, with Westminster making laws, hopefully, in the British national interest, and only in the British national interest. And we've had enough multilateralism. We've had enough bilateralism. It hasn't yielded results. You know, at the moment, for example, we go to France every time we want to solve the boat issue.
Yeah.
We've got to take unilateral action in the United Kingdom.
Got to do it ourselves. Got to do it ourselves.
We've got to do it ourselves.
Ben, thank you very much indeed. That's Ben Habib, former MEP and Reform UK spokesman.